Perfect. Let's go ahead and get started. So quick introduction for anybody that's not familiar with GoToWebinar. You should see a little menu on the right-hand side. For the webinar, to keep the background noise down, because we do have quite a few people here in the webinar today, the microphones are muted. So if you do have any questions, we do ask that you post those in the questions area on the right-hand side. Also, there will be a few polls as well that come up throughout the meeting or throughout the webinar. Feel free to participate those if you want to. I'll mention this as well when we get to this part of the presentation, but when we get to it and you do get a poll, if you do make any answers, we'll be sending you a report, basically a scorecard. So like a little bit more on that here in just a moment. Perfect. Well, today's topic that we're going to be talking about is basically taking control of projects. So as you see in the title, going from chaos to control, managing projects without losing your mind. So we want to put together this webinar really to talk about some best practices that's happening, that we see in the industry. D-Tools, we've been around for quite a few years now. It's our 27th, almost 28 years now that we've been around. I personally have been with D-Tools now for about 20 years. And I've had the opportunity to work with thousands of integrators over that period of time. And when we say integrators, we're primarily working with low voltage contractors. So that's AV, security, networking, fire, so building automation as well. But really, those are kind of the core markets that we're focusing on. And since we're talking to integrators day in and day out, we certainly get to see a lot of, what good looks like, also what bad looks like. And we've also kind of picked up some best practices too from being at a bunch of industry events. And once again, just connecting with people like you out there every day. So like I said, quick background on us as a company, been around 28 years. We've also helped over 8,000 integration companies worldwide. So by far the leading software platform for the industry. We also have a huge product library and also hundreds of vendors as well participate in our platform. But today's webinar isn't going to be really focused just on D-Tools. I mean, D-Tools, we will, of course, bring up a few things related to it, but the whole idea is even if you're not using D-Tools and even if you choose not to use the D-Tools platform, there's still some takeaways that you can, that are good to know. And we'll talk about those here today. So go ahead and dive into the thing. So as far as like what we see today, like the reality of current workflows, we'll kind of talk about some of these here briefly. One of the big things that comes up quite a bit is really companies have multiple tools to get the job done, but they're all disconnected. So nothing is talking to each other. There's a lot of double, triple entry happening throughout the process, which is obviously a time waste, leads to mistakes, a lot of problems. But I would say the most common thing we see is Excel. I would say that's when people ask, hey, who's your biggest competitor software-wise? Jokingly but true, it's Excel. So a lot of people using spreadsheets, using Word, and different tools. Once again, tools designed for specific tasks in the process, but nothing that really ties it all together. So that's a common issue we see across the industry, which is ironic because this industry, a lot of us are, our goal is to integrate systems together for our customers and provide a solution. And a lot of times from a business perspective, that takes a backseat. Some other things too, as we talked about, with this process of having multiple different tools, there's data being entered multiple times. You think about, your estimating tool, then you probably go and put together a proposal. If you do drawings at some point in the process, you're putting more information in there that you've already put in the other areas, work orders, invoices. So a lot of times data is usually entered in or touched on average about 5 or 6 times throughout the part of a process. And then that doesn't even account for changes that are going to happen too. So a lot of duplicate entry. Inconsistent documentation. Now, naturally, this is going to happen too with disconnected systems. You're going to have a bill of materials for a project. You're going to build drawings. You're going to have work orders. And when changes happen, that means you have to go back, as we've talked about, and make those changes in multiple places. So that does lead to some inconsistency in your documentation. Another big problem too is estimating. We'll talk a little bit about this today. I know that the idea here is taking control of projects and efficiency, but in order to get that project, you have to be able to estimate accurately. and also in a timely fashion to stay competitive in the industry. So we'll touch on that a little bit today as well. Another big problem too we see, inaccurate pricing. Now, pricing is certainly settled down. The price changes are settled down from what it was a few years ago, which is good. But price does change frequently, and it's very easy to. I mean, especially with the whole tariff thing too going on as well. That leads to pricing inaccuracies, and so no need to. Margins are already thin on equipment as it is, so no need to lose margin unnecessarily. So we see that quite a bit, and people losing money left and right on projects there. And lastly, I'd say another big area, which we'll kind of touch on a bit today, is really, as we talked about before, nothing's really centralized. Which ultimately, with that, mistakes again happen. Having to eat unnecessary costs. We missed a part. We forgot to calculate this type of labor. The customer made a change. We forgot to bill them, or we forgot to put that into a change order and get it signed. So once again, all these things that lead to a time waste and lost profitability on projects. So, so some of the things that, some of the costs that come behind some of these problems. Now, to be honest, there's way more than these four, so I can't fit them all onto one screen. But I would say I was trying to think about, okay, what are the things that we're seeing, I would say in the last 12 months that comes to us as pain points, or really kind of just ultimately cost of these inefficiencies. So one is proposal delays. Obviously, the market's still competitive. People are busy. And when somebody reaches out to get pricing, the first one back to the customer obviously has a slight advantage. Now, of course, when you send that to the customer, being fast isn't always the best. You want to make sure it's accurate, which is not, so it can't be just either one. It's got to be both fast and accurate. Loss margins. So probably the biggest thing I see across all the people I talk to, and after kind of doing a before and after, is labor underestimation. This is where you should be making a good bit of, really, you make your margin on labor. So as an industry, that's something that we need to be reminded of, and that our skills can't be replaced by well, a lot of people think they can. You just hire somebody that does it, that can we call them trunk slammers. So, but basically, yeah, you can, our professional skills are important. So labor underestimation is the biggest thing. So I'm not talking about just the labor rate, but just underestimating the time it truly takes, and all the other little things too that eat into cost: travel, prep time, design time. So we'll talk a little about that today. And once again, missed materials, another big thing. And it's usually not the big things, the expensive items, it's the little things that add up: cables, mounts, power supplies, little things here and there that just result in unnecessary internal change orders. Frustrated clients too. Now, this can come from few different factors, but one of the things is just the gap between what was sold and what was delivered. And so there's a few reasons that may happen, which we'll talk a little about today. And from an internal perspective, the teams get burnout. So when you're having to do things 2 or 3 times, you're constantly feeling like you're behind on things and that you're missing things. And that's really not a fault of you. It's just not having the right tools and the right process in place. So, having the right system in place does a few things. So one, as we talked about, allows you to generate those quotes and estimates much faster. So we'll talk about some things that you can do today to help with that. Another benefit of the right system and a right workflow is just having a single source of truth. Having everything in one place that's not only stored in one place, but is also interconnected when change is happening. So not having to go make that change in 5, 6 different places every single time. The other thing too is just built-in accountability. Mistakes do happen. We do, forget things, but the big thing here is really just knowing what we changed, who changed it, and why we changed it. And so based on that, we have accountability, and that also will lead to lessons learned. So we can stop, or at least lessen the likelihood we make those same mistakes inside the future. And of course, the opposite of a burnout team is having a happy team. So when somebody feels like they're at the end of the day, they feel like, you know what, I got a lot accomplished, I excelled, I did the best I could. And if you have the software and tools in place to support that, that leads to morale. And that also leads to people sticking around too, which kind of is a little side topic too. I mean, that's one of the big challenges too in the industry is finding help, right? So if everybody down to the install team, finding technicians is a chore these days. Everybody's looking for skilled, good quality technicians. Making them happy, making it where they look good and they can get their job done efficiently, giving them the tools for that makes a huge difference. So let's talk a little bit about what the project journey looks like. Now, of course, there's a lot more steps than this. I could probably put 40 dots on here, but trying to keep it fairly high level as we go through this. Now, starting a little bit from the opportunity stage, what I'm going to do is we're going to talk a little about what good looks like, what we see good, better, and then best. Like what's the ideal companies that are running efficiently, high profitability, everything's firing on all cylinders. And this is where this part of the webinar is going to be interactive for you. We're going to have a poll come up for each one of these steps of the journey. And this is optional. If you want to participate, feel free to respond. But the idea here behind this is with your response, be honest. And then we have a scorecard that we'll send you as well after the webinar if you choose to participate and are curious about this. You know, the whole idea is not to make anyone feel bad about things. And, you know, if you're lacking, you probably already know it in certain areas, but this does help make it more of a black and white thing. It's not just a gut feeling. You can say, hey, look, you know, we are struggling in these areas. What can we do about that to help? So talking a little bit about good. So from a basic standpoint, from an opportunity, having a CRM system of some level is important. Now, it doesn't have to be a full fancy program like Salesforce. It can be basic, but at least a centralized place where opportunities are tracked. And at minimum too, one of the things you want to do is certainly track your lead sources. It's good to know where your opportunities, where your money's coming from. So hopefully most of you are doing that. And then also as a part of, you know, the initial discovery phase with the customer, make sure you're capturing at least basic site details, snapping photos, understanding what the customer is looking for. All of that should go into a centralized CRM system. Now, better would be taking it up one level and introducing a software or application out in the field for doing those initial site visits and meetings with the potential customer. So a good tool will allow you to, you know, basically define the scope a bit further. You could add locations, take photos, make notes. And with that, you should also have some level of an intake form. What are some common questions or things that we need to gather from this potential customer and bring back to the team? And that team, you know, may be a team that's going to do the engineering design for you. Depending on the size of company, that may be you. But as you know, if you go and do a couple of visits a day, you get back at the end of the day and you're like, okay, wait, what do we talk about? What am I doing here? So obviously having some type of repeatable process where you take that and have a place to track and manage that is really important. And then best. So taking it one step further, if you have a tool out in the field that can not only help you gather those things, but also build a budget. One of the things that we see, you know, quite a bit is, you know, hey, I go out, I get the customer's information, we go back, we build, you know, we spend hours building this nice looking quote or proposal. I give it to the customer and they ghost me. And so one of the big reasons for that is a gap between what the customer has in their mind as a budget and what you think you have is, you know, what the budget would be. And so, of course, everybody, you know, for the most part, customers have no idea what these systems should cost. And so, you know, they have no frame of reference. And so having a tool that allows you to, while you're walking the site, ask questions, drag and drop things in, and actually start getting a budgetary number together. And once the system is set up properly to do that, you can get pretty accurate with it. But it does force the conversation of budget. And then that way you can, you know, oh, okay, I thought this system's going to be $200,000. Customers thinking 50,000. So now we've got a gap. Let's talk about how we can address it, how we can value engineer it, and set expectations. So, like I said, a good port, you know, as far as the opportunity goes, having a good tool or solution in place to do that is really important. So for the poll part of this, let me go ahead and I'm going to drop this in here. Hopefully this works as expected. So little poll's going to open up here. I'm going to give everybody about 10, 15 seconds. Once again, for those that want to participate, this is not public, so you can't see, each other's answers. But if anyone does, as people respond, be happy to kind of share where everybody's at as far as how people feel about their part of the process with this right now. So once again, a little poll there. Feel free to respond, post in there. We'll give it another 5 seconds or so, and then we'll go ahead and close it out and move on to the next topic here. So, and it seems so far, I mean, for what I'm seeing from the results here, most people would say that they feel like they're in a good spot, which is good. So, and we've got some that are in the better. Nobody, has yet say, hey, we're at that best level. So, and that's normal. So, like I said, don't feel bad about any of this stuff here. All right, so let's go ahead and hit close on that. Perfect. Thank you for those that participated. So we'll go ahead and move into the next part of the journey, which is really the design and estimation stage. So now we have a potential opportunity, and what good looks like is having a centralized product database of some sort. Now, that may not necessarily be a database. It may just be a folder where all of your price sheets are for your equipment. That's, I would still consider that in a good state. Hopefully not having to go out and, search every single time and log into portals every single time to look it up. Hopefully you have a good place you can store those price sheets for quick reference. But obviously, if you have a product database, that is ideal. Just makes it easier to access, easier to maintain. Now, if you are doing pre-sales drawings, having some standardized symbols out there, depending on what industry you're in, if you're in the AV industry, there's the J standard out there, which is adopted really by CEDIA and Infocom. Really for commercial or residential, you've got some drawing standards out there that you can get access to. You also have, if you're on the security side, SIA has some stencils or blocks out there you can use too that are industry standards. NFPA has the fire standards. Even, electrical, of course, has their standards too with NECA. We have all those standards inside of our platform, but a lot of those standards are accessible to you even if you're not using a tool like this. Now, the other big thing too is having, when you want to take it the next level from an estimation standpoint, we talked earlier about labor being consistently underbid or underestimated. And so having labor linked to parts really can be a game changer for a lot of companies. A lot of times people are used to putting together the parts lists, and then based on experience, it may get passed around to a couple people and they put their best guess on it, which is great. There's really no substitute, having it, 10, 20, 30 years of experience trumps a really good software solution, but it is hard to repeat. It's hard to make it a repeatable process. So as your team hires on more people, they don't always have that experience. And there's also, of course, gaps too. Even the best person in this experience can miss things here or there. So one of the things that we found to be quite helpful in this, in making sure you're accounting for all the types of labor, is having labor linked to parts. And that's not just installation time, that's programming, design time, prep time. I mean, there's all kinds of different things that go into it that you may kind of subconsciously know is there, but you're not actually putting it on paper and charging for it. So having that built in as standards does make it repeatable. We all put the same parts in, we all get the same labor to start. And of course, the right tools should also be able to deal with things like labor difficulty factors based on site conditions too. But once again, won't get too deep into that topic. Also packages. Now, some people are a big fan of packages. They use them now. Some people are like, we always do custom solutions. We never use packages. Well, there's always some standardized solutions you can have ready to go as a starting point, as a template. Of course, things are going to be changed. You're going to make alterations per customer. And of course, there are some systems that people do sell that are truly 100% custom, unique every time. But for most of us, you can utilize some level of pre-built systems or packages. So using that is a great way to also speed up the process of estimating, and also, once again, accuracy. Another big benefit of that too is just when you start utilizing standardized systems, the install team gets more efficient, they get comfortable with it. and you'll find that you can be more profitable in that area too. Now, a couple other things too that really kind of take you to the next level from an estimation standpoint is having a tool that does automated price feeds. So one of the things that we did, I would say about 6 years ago on the detool side of things, is started partnering with vendors to do direct price feeds. Fast forward today, we've got hundreds of brands covered under those price feeds from both distributors and manufacturers. And that's been, like I said, a game changer for a lot of companies. Every night, the pricing gets synced up. We pull down the latest cost into the system. So you're confident that when you're putting some numbers on paper, you know what your true cost, what your true margin is. And with those price updates too, getting automatic checking of the BOM. So anytime you go to present the proposal, making sure that price is still accurate from when you started it, that's also key. Now, accessories is kind of a term that we have in our system, but really no matter what software or tool you're using for that, accessories are really just what other supplemental items do we need to sell with this? And that's the power supplies, the mounts, the cables, optional labor. So having those in there, once again, just make sure the little things don't slip through the cracks, and we're always accounting for those as we go through it. And then I would say another, best practice too is, if you can, having a solution that integrates the bill of materials with the drawings is a huge deal. That allows you to draw it or design it, lay it out first, and have your BOM or estimate built based off of that. And of course, changes and revisions that happen, once again, reflect across all the documentation in there. So let's go ahead and let's go through another poll out there. Now that we've talked a little bit about design and estimation, like I said, don't be shy. Feel free to jump in there and tell me kind of what you vote on where you think you're at right now with your current tool sets. And like I said, no right or wrong answer. But yeah, let's see. Okay, good. So getting some good feedback on this one too. So looks like people feel a little bit better about this part of the process than the opportunities, which is good. So that's good to hear. Excellent. And like I said, a lot of people feel like they're in that good or better area. So awesome. All right, perfect. I'll give it another 5 seconds here, and then we'll go ahead and close out that portion of it. Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, so let me go ahead and close that out. Last call. Okay, perfect. All right, so now the next part of the journey is, okay, we now have got our numbers together, and now we're going to take it into, the quote/proposal. I say quote/proposal. Some people use the term interchangeably. I kind of envision a quote as more of a little more simple, straightforward. We're listing out what we're selling. Has maybe a scope, parts list, and price, and of course, some contract details. Proposals, tend to be, I think of those will be a little bit more graphical, have a lot more information like about the company and a much more detailed scope of work, maybe some references. So, having some branded documentation, of course, is, should be the bare minimum. I think everybody's probably doing that. You at least have a quote or proposal template you're using with your company information and logo and stuff on it. It's a pretty basic stuff there. Big thing though is make sure you're really diligent on inclusions and exclusions, just to make sure, once again, you're covering yourself on that when it comes to it, and making sure that even if you have a boilerplate exclusions and inclusions, that's great. Just once again, keep in mind and have that discussion internally, like what project factors will require us to make adjustments to that. Scope of work, every project should have that. I know everybody hates the scope of work part of it, but it is kind of a necessary thing to cover yourself. And once again, a good tool will help you with that, not only help you develop it, but also make sure that's covered. And also version control. You may be sending out different versions of the quotes, different scenarios. So just have some way, even if you're doing a Word doc or a PDF, just make sure you're numbering it every time you send a version, so you have something to reference back to you with the customer. So once again, all pretty basic stuff on the good side of things. Now, the next stage would be showing customer optional and alternative solutions. And this is one thing that in our platform, we allow you to show options, which is, hey, you could add this if you want to, and this is what the price would be. And we also present alternates, which are basically upgrade or downgrades to the solution you're presenting. So it's sometimes nice to show customers options, whether they're asking for it or not. Hey, we're going between a 70 or 85-inch display in this room. Hey, we'll show you both options here. But it does give you the ability to present some upgrade options, which is nice. So that's definitely something we see as a good best practice here. E-signatures, I think a lot of people are definitely moving more and more to this. Not quite as many people, doing the old school paper and pen thing, but e-signatures are great. Gives you a quick way to send it out, get quick turnaround time on it. And also, everybody's on their phones these days, so it's good to be able to review and sign off on something electronically. In revisions, we talked about the version control earlier, but also, ideally, if you have a software solution, that should have change logs so you know what changed from version to version. So once again, we have that accountability. We can also explain to the customer what's changed between each version. And once again, just nice, clarity for both sides here. Now, on the best category, I put client action notification. So when you're sending out documents, especially for review or signature, knowing when the customer looks at it is great, because A, they got it, and then B, you can set your follow-ups based on that. So that's something that we've got implemented in our solution. And once again, a lot of great feedback on that capability. But not just us, there's other tools out there too you can use from Adobe and DocuSign that can do the same thing. So they can also tell you, hey, customer looked at it. So you can base your follow-ups on that. And sometimes too, things go in the spam folder. So it's good to know that, hey, they did get it. So you don't have to wonder about that. Now, we talked about proposals, doing some specific templates per vertical. And so depending on what industry you're in, if it's the commercial side of things, you may be dealing with education, you may be dealing with corporate, government. If you're on the residential side, you may have, your super high-end residential, you may have your standard, your builder stuff. So having templates and documentation branded and really tailored to those versus a one-size-fits-all is another best practice too that we see a lot of companies do. And of course, having a tool that can support that easily, so you're not having to manually adjust those every time, would be the best. In approval workflows, so depending on the organization, you may, having the process of reviewing stuff before it goes out the door is great, and especially setting thresholds. So if it exceeds a certain dollar value, you may want that threshold to kick in. Maybe not every quote that goes out needs to be reviewed by somebody. But if it's a certain size dollar amount, or maybe if it falls below a certain margin target, you should get notified, and there should be a process in place for at least somebody else to put their hands on it to make sure we didn't make a mistake. And also, once again, just give us the thumbs up on it. So for this part, for the quick proposal, just like before, I'm going to go ahead and do the poll here. Let's go ahead and post that and give everybody a little bit of time here to respond to that. So yeah, just let it, feel free to answer, where do you feel like you're at right now in this part of the process? And like I said, I think a lot of people, I would say on average, in that good, better, best, once again, is quite common. But do have some people that feel like they're killing it and they're in the best part. So that's good. Okay, excellent. I'll give everybody about 5 seconds here more to respond if you want to. And for anybody that did respond, if you're curious, we'll send out a, just so you didn't, I was going to do a handout, but I think we're just going to, anybody that responded, we should be able to track responses and send you a scorecard. If for some reason that doesn't work properly, we'll circle back with you, but that should capture that, and we can give you a personalized scorecard on everything. All right, closing it out. Thank you. All right, so next step in the journey, as you see here, is engineering. And when we're talking about engineering, this is where we get into the deeper drawing types of things. Now, depending on the industry and the type of customers you're working with, you may not need, full engineering sets for every project, or maybe any projects. But if you are doing some level of drawings, and we say, floor plan layouts is probably the most common, elevations, which would be, side views, front views, rack risers, things like that. Wiring diagrams, that's where you get down to the input output level and show how the system is wired up and connected. And of course, having a submittal package. So, giving the customer user guides, cut sheets, anything else that may be a requirement for that project. So a lot of people are, you may or may not be doing drawings for all or even some of your projects, but if you are, you're probably doing some level of those drawings there and have those in there. So one of the, kind of taking it one step up would be making sure you have unique IDs or, codes or numbers on every piece of equipment and really every cable on that drawing. It's one thing to know, okay, what the manufacturer's, the manufacturer model number is, but having unique code or ID on every piece of equipment on that drawing is a way to reference it, across the team, especially on the install side of things. You may have 5 of the same SKU in the same room. Let's talk about exactly which one we're talking about, which will also tie back into something we'll mention a little bit later on the service side. So, if you can, now, if you're doing this manually, it is a pain. So I understand you may not be able to do this on every project, but, having cable numbers on the drawings and equipment will pay dividends, especially for bigger projects. Also, revision control. So just like the quote or estimate we talked about earlier, making sure that you have a way of tracking revisions so that way you can go back to them and also compare them on what's changed throughout the process. Now, an ideal solution on the best category is going to be having those drawings all data driven. So what that means is the drawings, the bill of materials, the labels, the reporting for out in the field, all of that's interconnected to the same database. So that means I'm not changing it in a bunch of different places. I don't have to worry about things being miscommunicated. Just removes a lot of errors. Just having a single source of truth is an ideal solution, and that's something that I would say the detail side of things, that is something that we do best, is tying the drawings and documentation together. Automated submittals too. This has been another thing too that I haven't seen anybody in the industry solve, but it's something that we rolled out almost 2 years ago. The ability to click a button and it pulls together all the user guides, cut sheets, all the stuff that you may need for the equipment being sold on the project. I talk to people all the time that spend hours, sometimes days doing that. And it is a mind-numbing process. And the frustrating thing is the one you did this week may be very similar to the one you did last week, but you still have to go through and there's always that manual effort. So having something like that can automate it can gain hours, if not days back on some projects in wasted labor, wasted effort. So like I said, that would be, these are some of the things I would say on the engineering side that really some of the people firing all cylinders really have got down and have mastered. So once again, just like before, let's go ahead and throw it out there for the polling part of this. So you should see that pop up here on the screen. And after this, we will be diving into procurement. Now, the order of some of these stages too may look a little different for you, and they actually will look a little different sometimes depending on the type of project. So I do get that. It's not always a linear thing here, but had to pick an order for it to follow. So we're going to go with that. All right, perfect. So we got some good responses on this. And I would say this is part of the process of, it looks like from the polling that people are so far the least confident or, feel like they have the least grasp on as far as what things that they could be doing well. So it's good feedback. And that's actually another consistency. This is part of the process that a lot of people do need help with. So we're going to close that poll out here in a couple seconds. Okay, perfect. All right, good deal. So let's go ahead and move on to procurement. We probably won't spend too much time on this one, but it's kind of straightforward. But with this, a centralized place to manage your POs and statuses, whether that's a spreadsheet or just a folder, doesn't have to be super fancy. Having a good place like a master record of all your vendor terms and lead times, which once again, a spreadsheet can be good for that at minimum if you can. Of course, software tool that can do that will be even better. But Going into the next stage of a PO request process, so a lot of times people that are, building the project or even managing the project may not be actually ordering the equipment. So have the ability to pull together the parts you need to request to be ordered to whoever that person is, if it's not yourself, is really important. And price verification too. So this is once again another thing somebody may be doing manually. Either that or you're sending the P out to the vendor and they're kicking it right back to you because the price doesn't match the current price. But having a tool or software in place that does that verification before you even issue the PO is huge. That's something that we do and we offer. And like I said, that can be a game changer. And also just communicating order statuses to the project management team. So knowing, okay, what's been ordered, what's been received, what's been delivered, and also having expected delivery dates. That's also really important. But also too, I mean, on the best side of things, having some automated notification around that is really ideal. Even, letting down to the project managers know, hey, these items have not come in by the date that was promised by the vendor. So that way, if we're going to have got an installation coming up where that's not going to be possible because we're missing stuff, it's good to know that ahead of time so we can make adjustments and still make the best of that day with other things that may be needed to done. Also consolidating POs. So this is another feature thing that we've added. There may be some other tools out there that do this, but being able to go in and select all the jobs that you want to order equipment for that week or that day, and having it consolidate those into individual POs automatically to each vendor. So pulling it all together. And what that can do, instead of having to create a bunch of individual POs to the same vendor, consolidate them. You may save on freight. Might even be able to work out a better discount or qualify for a better discount. So having a tool that can do that automatically for you is once again another way to save time and money. And once again, that automated price verification, having a tool that can do that double check without you having to manually look it up, once again, saves time, avoids headaches as well. So once again, that's just some of the things on the procurement side, some things that we see out there. And let's go ahead and hit launch on that. So we'll go ahead and post that, give everybody a chance to do that. Now, depending on your role, you may not know kind of where you fall company-wise. You may have, probably have some type of gut feeling on that, but feel free to post there and give everybody here about 5-8 seconds to respond to this one. Okay, everybody's feeling good. Everybody's in that good or better kind of range right now, which is good. All right, perfect. Okay, I'll give it 3 seconds. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and close that out. Okay, perfect. So now let's go ahead and slide into the next topic here. So we'll get into scheduling. So when it comes to scheduling, having a centralized calendar for all your resources, I think it's almost impossible these days to do scheduling without electronic calendar of some sort. Obviously, Outlook and Google Calendar is probably the most common that we see out there, where you may have a dedicated scheduling tool. But minimum, have a place for all that centrally managed. A place for daily tasks. Those daily tasks could be, for some people, I've seen just emails sent out with text. Sometimes it's a PDF or a document that they either view electronically or they print. And then also time tracking too. And I say electronic time tracking, basically being able to capture time spent out on the field. So those are all kind of like, what a good process looks like, having those things. Now, a better process takes it up a bit and have the ability in some form or fashion to capture site photos with notes. So before install, during install, post install, a place to capture problems or issues. Having that all there. Conflict notifications, hey, we're having a problem in the field, a place to message, a place for that to be done centrally. And ideally, that should be a field application dedicated for the field. So having a tool designed specifically for technicians that really shows them everything they need to see, and then also, of course, importantly, anything they don't need to see that's not relevant to them or that may be sensitive. And so having a good field application out there that can capture these notes, these photos, post updates, do your time tracking. Once again, that's what better looks like. Now, best is going to be, having a mobile application, once again, dedicated to the field, so you communicate with them but also having things like checklists built into it so they can actually go through and check off the equipment that needs to be done. That's also tied back to maybe any drawings or other documentation there. Also being able to, with this scheduling, that the field team can pull that up on their phone, see their calendar, see their schedule, and make adjustments. And also, things like email, daily email, reminders or recaps, also having that automated, huge deal as well. So on scheduling, just like before, let's go ahead and throw out the poll there for that. And we'll go ahead and give everybody a few seconds here to respond to that and post kind of where they feel they're at with that. I feel like a lot of people are probably, probably have a pretty good grasp on that. I mean, at least on a good perspective. But others, like I said, don't have a good, at least a place to drop photos and notes back, even if it's just an email back to the office, then you can do that. Okay, we'll give everybody here a few more seconds. Okay, perfect. All right, so go ahead and close that out. All right, good. So, all right, let's go ahead and slide into the next topic here. So what we're going to be getting into is project management. So on the project management side, what a good process has is a project dashboard of some sort with statuses. Once again, this could just be an Excel spreadsheet with some color coding, things like that. Like I said, that's okay, as long as that's something that everybody that needs to touch the project can access or view. Having task management, so not just putting something on the schedule, but also dictating, okay, what needs to be installed and any notes, and also passing on any site information like, Wi-Fi password, building your gate codes, having that captured and being able to track that would be good. Once again, electronic time tracking, and also a process for dealing with field change orders. So, fact of life, changes are going to happen out in the field. There does need to be a process in place on how to handle that. And like I said, that may, for right now, maybe a text or email back to the office, but we need to at least have that process documented. Now, from a better standpoint would be building Gantt charts. And so Gantt charts can be used to really kind of lay out everything, and also even set up dependencies and just kind of visualize that, things that you can't really see on a calendar, something a little bit longer term. And Gantt charts are good for internal. It's also good for communicating with other contractors or the customer. And this may even be a requirement that some of your customers may have. And so having a tool that integrates that Gantt chart into the system that you're using for estimating and designing is really great. Also, real-time job costing. So, with the proper tool, with the software tool, as you're tracking those actual times out in the field, that posting back to the job and actually seeing clearly where we're at. What did we estimate? Where are we at actuals? Are we running over on certain things? So just having some of those insights there. And also electronic field change orders. So going back to an application out in the field, the technician making it the easiest possible for them to document some parts or labor that was used outside the scope. That's going to guarantee you we capture those if you make it easy for them to do that. If it is a very arduous, painful process, I guarantee you they're not going to always do it. So, or they will quote unquote forget. So automated change orders. So, with this, and this is really, beyond just field stuff, having a solution or tool that once a project is approved, locks down the bill of materials. So at that point, if we do have changes that happen, having a proper tool, like one of the things that we do in the detool system is when you go and make a change either to a drawing or the bill of materials on an approved job, it's going to prompt you to create a change order. And it's going to ask you, is this an internal change or is this a customer requested change? And that way we can track, who needs to approve it and what that process looks like, and also know how the numbers are going to get impacted on the job. So if it's an internal change, we're covering the cost on it, so our cost gets impacted, but the sell price or contract price stays the same. If it is a customer change, obviously we want to pass it on to them, but we do want to get their approval before we bill them and order that equipment. So having a good formalized system to track change orders is huge. And like I said, that can be the difference between a really good job when we sold it, and at the end you're looking at it, it's like, wow, okay, margins aren't so good on that one, a lot of times it's these change orders. That's where it creeps in and starts eating away at it. So tracking actual labor, so beyond just time tracking, getting a little bit more detailed on what's travel time, what's install time, what's shop time, training time. So having a place to capture all those and see, how the team is utilizing their actual time day to day. And then also, once again, automated field change orders track. So having an easy way for them to communicate those change orders back to the field, which in our system prompts the PM or the project manager to, hey, there's been a field change. Let's decide if that's an internal change or a customer requested change inside of here. So let's go ahead and throw this out here on the poll side of things. Go ahead and hit launch, post it out there. Give everybody a little bit of time here to respond on kind of where they're at, where they feel they're at right now. And like I said, a lot of people are going to be, in that probably good, better, so maybe even best. But yeah, I think for the most part, what I'm seeing so far response-wise, everybody's kind of in that good stage. So that's good. All right, perfect. We'll give it a few more seconds here, and we'll go ahead and close out that one. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, perfect. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on to next one, which is the installation stage. So what that looks like, we kind of mentioned this earlier, but having daily task sheets, daily time sheets, wire schedules, so documenting wire runs, where they're going from, going to, is a good best practice. Now, kind of taking it to the next step on the installation stage, having a way of confirming any asset details that you may have tracked, and that's assuming you are tracking them on some or all projects. But that's basically just could just be a printed spreadsheet, has serial numbers, MAC, and IP addresses. Of course, if you're using a tool that captures that during the ordering and receiving part of things, they can view that on their mobile application. Automated wire labels. So, and this is something we do as well, which I think is really cool. And this is probably one of those little small features that I see have one of the biggest impacts. Is just having a system that automatically creates your wire numbers and your wire labels. So you can just upload them to a printer. Somebody's not punching them out. You're not handwriting labels, and you are labeling consistently. And when you go out to the field to service that system later, you know exactly what the cable is and where it goes. And also providing red lines. So red lines, just for anybody that's not familiar with that term, just field changes. Hey, we've moved this here. So basically just kind of marking it up, scribbling it up, whatever you need to on the drawings, just so that comes back so we can update the as-built drawings inside the system. Now, best is going to be the ability to kind of not only confirm this, but also capture this information. So if we didn't scan the serial number, we didn't scan in the MAC address, that can be, if that was missed, having a mobile tool where the technician can just quickly enter that in or put that in is awesome. Also, IP addresses. A lot of times this stuff may not have IP addresses until it's put on the network. And so once again, that's a field thing. So having the ability to add that and that gets updated, that all posts back here. And then also e-signatures on all field change orders. So when there is a change, specifically if it's a change that the customer needs to pay for, let's get a signature confirmation on that. So not just a signature, but also a name, because sometimes those signatures are most of the time they're not legible. So having a tool that will allow you to do that, capture it. This is what you're agreeing to. This is the estimated price. They sign off on it. Makes life a lot easier when we go to send them a bill later, when we have that in there from an accountability standpoint. So let's go ahead and hop in here. Let's go ahead and post this here for the poll on that one for the installation side of things. So feel free to take a moment there to jump in on that and participate. It's good. And so we've got a couple more things here on the timeline, or the project journey, I should say. So good. Okay. And once again, everybody's in that good, better, good and better range, which is good to see. All right, perfect. We'll give it a few seconds here. All right, go ahead and close it out. Okay, perfect. All right, so next thing is service. So talking a little bit about service. So one is selling service agreements. Now, depending on what industry you're in, if you're in security, you've probably been doing some level of monitoring and or service agreements already. AV is a little newer to it. I know if you've been to any conferences the last 5 years, that's been hammered into you. Hey, you've got to sell service plans, sell agreements, which totally agree. Recurring revenue is amazing from a business perspective. So selling those, and once again, doesn't have to be anything fancy, but at least have a way or method of doing that. Also, having a formal service platform is ideal, and in one ideally that treats service like service and not just like a project, because they're not the same. And also tracking service history, at least a place where you can go back and see your service history. Like I said, that's all what a good process looks like. Now, with a better system, the customer can actually initiate the service requests, and also with that, provide customer notifications like, hey, we got your service request. Here's your service order number. And also any other updates too can be communicated to the customer, as well as notifications internally too. That could be, hey, the service ticket was open and it's not closed out, so it's overdue. So having all of that tracked in one place is great. And also too, from a service perspective, if you are offering service plans, actually tracking your actual hours against that. So at the end of the day, knowing if it was profitable or not. Especially if this is something that you're newer at the last year or two. Sometimes you may just be selling a bucket of hours and kind of hoping and praying that that actually comes out to be profitable in the end. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But this does give you some lessons learned on, okay, what do we miss? How do we make that calculation or that number better so that we're not losing money, we're actually profitable on those service plans. And also an ideal tool will later reference the site assets. So what I mean by that is being able to go back and quickly search, hey, what does that customer have on that site? When was it installed? Is it under warranty? What's the serial number? Having that all captured in one spot is great. It makes life a lot easier on the service side and can avoid a lot of running around trying to sort out like what's what. So we're going to go ahead and launch here on that. And just like before, we'll give everybody a little bit of time here to post, kind of, respond where you're at on this part of the process here. So we'll give everybody about 10 more seconds here to respond to that. And so far from the responses I've seen, it's seems like most people feel like they're in the not good to good area. So this is a weaker point, I would say, it looks like for a lot of folks here. Okay. Which is, once again, everything that's happening here as far as the responses go pretty much aligns with what we're seeing day to day. So that's consistency there. All right, let's go ahead and close that one out. All right, perfect. Okay, so last thing we're going to talk about in the journey here is just talking about analysis. So job's done, everything's booked, everything's paid. Doing a project closeout meeting, should be doing this. You may not be able to do this for every project. I mean, it makes sense to do that for all of them, but any of your medium to larger projects, just sitting down once a week, talking about those that have wrapped up and talk about your actuals versus estimated, assuming you can capture that effectively. And also just, lessons learned, what worked, what didn't work, and then talk about how we can improve on that the next time we have a job like that. So, an ideal scenario is having some level of business analytics. So a good software tool should show you some analytics from the sales side of things, average profitability, what customers are, what customers are the best customers for you, which salesperson, we've got different multiple salespeople, who's the most profitable. But also, customers or what projects are profitable too. I mean, a lot of times I'm talking to a lot of people these days that are having to turn down projects because they don't have the bandwidth to do them. And so it's, deciding, what project types are the most profitable for us is really key. And then you've also got the best is AI insights and predictive analytics. So really, and this is a newer thing. So I will say that this is not something that we've mastered quite yet. This is something that we are working towards. But taking all this data and actually providing you some insights and also giving you, some feedback based on trends and things. So like I said, this is something that is, still newer as AI is kind of coming out here the last couple of years, but Once again, I think a lot of good things are going to be coming here over the next 12 months, especially with our team. We'll be working on that. So yeah, we've got the poll posted there. I'm going to jump in and respond to that. We'll give everybody here about 10, 15 seconds on that. Like I said, this is part of the process too that, for a lot of people, this isn't even a part of the process. It just happens every once in a while. Usually you'll have a meeting when something goes really bad, and, but you should be having meetings when things go really well too. Cause like I said, you can learn just as much from the good ones than the bad ones. So just really communicating and getting on the same page about this is really important. Okay, perfect. So go ahead and close that out. Okay, thanks everybody. I know there's a lot to participate in, but I think this will be helpful here for everybody. So a couple things to kind of finish off on here. So having the right tool, we know we talked a lot about benefits and things. This is what we see, from an ROI perspective with our tool is probably very similar with some other industry specific applications. One thing I just, encourage you to do if you are at some point looking for a software solution, make sure it's designed for your industry. If you've ever used something that isn't, it's a whole trying to fit a square peg in a round hole thing doesn't work. So you can try to do workarounds, try to make things fit, but having something purpose built and is constantly being innovated and evolving for the industry is big. So after you get through that first year, getting into that third year, it's not uncommon to see an 8 to 10 times return on your investment year over year, and sometimes even higher than that. But like I said, it's a good software tool once properly implemented is always going to pay way more. It's going to reward you way more than it costs. So path improvements. So if today hit home or resonates with you, and if there's anything that you think that we might be able to help out with, we're happy to do that. This talks a little bit about the process here. Initial consultation. So if you'd like to meet with us to chat further to see if one of our details products is a good fit for you, we're happy to schedule a call to do that, which I'll have some information on that shortly. And then won't get into all these details, but if it ends up being a fit, there is a whole process for getting everything installed, getting you migrated, getting everybody trained up, and of course, providing ongoing support. And people that we have on our team that do this, most of them are from the industry. A lot of them were users of our platform over the years that they love it so much they wanted to help out new customers. So, like I said, we've got the background not only in the industry but also on the software as well. So if you'd like to schedule a personal demonstration to actually get into the software and get into the meat of it, there's a QR code here on the screen. If you scan that with your mobile device, that'll take you to our site where you can fill it out to schedule a demonstration with us. We do have two different platforms. One's called DTools Cloud and one is called DTools SI. If you're not sure which one you want to see a demonstration of, we can reach out to you and explain the differences between the two. But yeah, you feel free to schedule a personal demo if you'd like to see more of the application. And hopefully this was helpful for you today. The whole idea behind this was just to share some best practices based on what we see day to day. And like I said, a lot of this stuff isn't just software related, it's process related. And our goal at the end of the day is to help everybody in the industry, be better or incrementally improve whatever that may look like for you. So if we can be of help or be of service to you, just let us know. That's my contact details there, and that QR code on the screen that goes to my LinkedIn. So if you use LinkedIn and want to get connected there or want to post any questions there, feel free to do that. Otherwise, you can always give me a call or shoot me an email. And if I'm not the right person, I'll get you in contact with the right person on our team. So, all right, almost exactly to the hour, so nailed it. So, all right, appreciate everybody's time today. Hopefully that was helpful. And we'll look forward to speaking with you soon if we can be of assistance. All right, have a good rest of your day. Take care.